Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. Today we're going to talk about Series 2 of the Mad Monsters. You may be familiar with the Mad Monsters. This is a very mad monster. Look how mad he is. But that is Series 1 by Migo. That's not what we're going to talk about. But since we have them, let's just get these out of the way. This is not what we're going to talk about. This is a very mad Frankenstein. He is so mad. Look how mad he is. But again, we're not talking about these toys today. Just pretend you don't see them. Oh my goodness, look how mad that Dracula. Now that is a mad Dracula. He's mad. He is angry. He's angry because he wants a longer cape. He is up to something. I bet there's all kinds of glare on these things right now. And that is a very mad Wolfman. I don't know, he looks kind of like he thinks he has the upper hand on you. He's kind of smirking. Look how he's got a little smirk. These four figures are the original Mego Mad Monsters. The original Mad Monster series. The human Wolfman, the dreadful Dracula. I think Frankie is the Monster Frankenstein, and the mummy is the Horrible Mummy. He's horrible, the Horrible Mummy. Look how horrible he is. I hope I'm getting Frankie right. I think he's just the Monster Frankenstein. He doesn't have an adjective like horrible or dreadful. We have the human Wolfman, so he's human, but poor Frankie is a monster. That's not fair. If Frankie's a monster, why is the Wolfman human? That doesn't make any sense. But it's the human Wolfman, dreadful Dracula, the Monster Frankenstein, Horrible Mummy. And if I got that wrong, I'll put something on the screen correcting it. And these were made originally in 1974 by Migo. And then they were reissued by Lion Rock in 1980. This is the original Mad Monster series. I used to have packaged ones. I don't have those anymore. I just have these loose ones. But these are original. And they're in very nice condition. They came in solid boxes with no window and iconic gray Moro art on the boxes. And then Migo changed the packaging and issued them in window boxes. And then what collectors call Kresge cards. And I don't know if this was sequential or it was all kind of out at the same time. But as a kid, I remember the solid boxes. I never saw the Kresge cards or the window boxes. The only packaging I remember for these were the solid boxes with no window. And as a kid, I didn't like them because I thought they were Hammer monsters. I thought those were Hammer Studios action figures. And the Azrak Hamway toys were Universal. So I wanted Universal, licensed Universal monsters. I didn't want Hammer monsters. That was my attitude as a little kid. And I remember sitting in a shopping cart, like in that child seat, and being pushed through the aisle and seeing the Mego display of those Mad Monsters, the cardboard counter display with the backer card. I don't have one of those to show you. And seeing all these boxes and plucking them out, looking at the artwork and thinking, that looks like Hammer. I remember looking at the Wolfman and the Mummy and opening them up and pulling them out. The boxed ones come in bags inside the box. And just looking at the toys and thinking, that's not Universal, that's Hammer. Putting it back. I didn't want those. So I didn't have those as a kid. But anyway, we're not, as you've noticed, we're not talking about those. That's not what we're here for. Those are the originals. Now in 2005, Classic TV Toys reissued those figures. And then in either 2012 or 2013, depending on what source you reference, Figures Toy Company put them back out again. But also in 2005, Classic TV Toys released a second series. Mego only put out those 4 characters. Mego never made any other characters for the Mad Monster series, but Classic TV Toys made a second series decades later. And before we talk about those, let's talk about this company, because there seems to be a lot of confusion. Maybe it's just confusion in my brain about the difference between Classic TV Toys and Figures Toy Company. Who are these people? And people talk as if they're 2 different companies, but they're the same company. It's my understanding that Classic TV Toys was, maybe still is, it is, in fact, I visited that website today. So Classic TV Toys is a website through which Figures Toy Company sells their toys. But the packages, as you'll see, will say Figures Toy Company. So it seems like the company sometimes will put out toys under that Classic TV Toys name, which is the website, classictvtoys.com. And then sometimes in later years, like to this day, they'll put out toys under the Figures Toy Company banner. And that seems to have created some confusion. Are these 2 companies? Are they one company? They're one company. Let's talk about the history of this company. In 1989, Anthony Belasco started Figures Inc. Figures Inc. Figures Inc. didn't make any toys, as far as I know. This was basically a toy shop magazine, toy dealer. It was back in the old toy shop days, that was a magazine that people, well, originally it was monthly, and then it was every other week. But it was a magazine for toy collectors, and you'd open it up, and there'd be ads from collectible toy dealers, like display ads, also some classified too. And they'd have all these little black and white images of toys for sale, and the images were about postage stamp size, and you were supposed to shell out, through the mail, hundreds of dollars to buy some toy based on a photo that big, tiny little black and white photo, grainy little newsprint photo. You'd call them up and say, "Hey, is that toy still available?" They'd say, "Yes." And you'd say, "Well, it says it's in near mint condition. Is that correct?" "Yes, it is." "Oh, okay, I'll just make a money order out for $500 in the 1990s, and I'll just put it in the mail and send it to you." "Okay, great." And then maybe a month later, you'd get that toy. And then you'd look at it and say, "Oh, I guess the condition's okay. Good enough." That's how Toy Shop worked. This is before eBay. So Figures Inc., from what I've researched, basically they were a toy dealer in toy shop, and they would go to toy shows and set up. But basically they were a toy dealer. They weren't making anything yet. Then in 1998, Belasco teamed up with Steve Sandberg to start Figures Toy Company. At first, they manufactured licensed wrestling memorabilia, pro wrestling memorabilia. And they did that. They focused on that several years. Then in 2004, Figures Toy Company started the Classic TV Toys website. And then they began manufacturing Mego-style figures. And that's when the new Mego revolution began. There had already been the classic covers figures in the 90s, but those weren't really Mego style. This resurgence in that 70s Mego format really began with Figures Toy Company, Classic TV Toys, 2004, when they brought that back with the old style articulation, the way those old bodies were constructed. Not to say that there weren't Mego-ish figures before that, but that's when the trend that we're still experiencing to this day, the modern Mego toys that are actually made by Mego, the company called Mego, and similar toys made by NECA, they're retro cloth toys, MC toys, all those Mego style toys that we've seen over the past 20 years. That's when that trend really got started. In 2012 and through 2014, Figures Toy Company made a big push to acquire a bunch of new licenses. And that's when their catalog really blew up. And their selection broadened considerably. And now they have, well, for the past several years, they've had a number of different licensed figure lines, from cartoons in comic books, in movies, and TV shows, and all kinds of stuff. What I'm going to show you falls right around 2005. So that's right after Figures Toy Company started Classic TV Toys and brought back this Mego format. I've seen some people date these toys to 2007. We'll look at the cards and see. We'll see what the cards say. It sounds like a tarot deck. We'll see what the cards say. But I think the toys were about to, well, you know, Classic TV Toys in 2005 brought back the Mad Monsters, like reissues of the ones we just saw. So maybe in 2007, that's when they issued the second series. But we'll find out. We'll look at some cards, and there'll be a date on there, and then we'll find out. Now, I never did collect the individual reissued Mad Monsters. Frankly, they didn't look good. They didn't look like the originals that I just showed you. I was not happy with them, so I never bought them. I thought it was strange that actually they missed the mark so badly. This is the closest I ever came to collecting those. This is actually a Svengoolie set, and there's Svengoolie. But you see next to him are reissues of those Mego monsters that we saw. Not exactly a faithful reproduction there, is it? Nope. I mean, that one doesn't look too bad. Yeah. Well, so you can see why I didn't buy them. I bought this one because it has Svengoolie in it. This is a licensed Svengoolie product. This is put out by Figures Toy Company. Now, does it say Classic TV Toys? No. It says Figures Toy Company. And that is the name of the company. The company is Figures Toy Company, the company that makes these things. What can I say about these? This company put these out twice. First under the Classic TV Toys banner, apparently, and then a few years later under Figures Toy Company banner, which is what we have here. And they still make the Mad Monster Castle, which is a reissue of the Mego Mad Monster Castle playset from the 70s. They still offer that, but they don't make the individual figures anymore. In fact, when this thing was made, these figures had been out of production for a while. So not only was this an opportunity to get the Svengoolie, but if you missed these the first time, or the last couple of times, this was another opportunity to get these toys. And I wonder whether the figures in these sets were manufactured for this set, or whether this was unsold stock, and this was an opportunity to move some of that unsold stock. I think that Svengoolie is identical to a previous Svengoolie. This company has made multiple Svengoolie figures, and I think that one is similar to the first Svengoolie figure, which sold out and years ago and started going for a lot of money, and people were upset that they missed out on it. So this was kind of an opportunity to get that figure if you missed it the first time. I don't have the individual Classic TV Toys or Figures Toy Company Mad Monsters, either the first time they put them out or the second time, but I do have this, so you can see what they look like. For whatever reason, they didn't include Wolfman in here. Of all the ones to skip, I wonder why they skipped Wolfman. That's odd. I wonder if he was more expensive to make, or maybe they didn't have enough of him on hand to fill however many of these they made. Because this was a limited thing. It's a cool set. These figures are cool in this set. I like them in this set as a Svengoolie novelty, kind of like, a Svengoolie souvenir if you're a fan of Svengoolie. My tongue's all tied. Say that 10 times in a row. They're cool like this, but as individual carded figures, I didn't like them because they just didn't look like the originals. I remember they used to sell them at Toys R Us, and I looked at them and said, why do these look so off? How come they didn't get this right? Like we just saw that goofy Frankenstein. And here's the original. He's got some smudges on that acrylic case. Look at that. I mean, it's beautiful. It's serious looking. It's got a lot of charm, a lot of personality, a lot of drama. Nothing like that reissue we just saw. And even this more comical Dracula, yeah, he's caricatured, but it looks better than the one we just saw from Figures Toy Company. Much better. And I don't know why they couldn't nail that. Anyway, so a couple of years after they put out the first round of Mad Monster reissues, they gave us a second series. And I was excited about that, the second series. And this card says 2005. So I don't know where people are getting this 2007 date that I've seen here and there. Before we look at this critter, let's take another look at this reissue series. So that is the original reissue set. Dracula has a hole in his head. They made 2 Draculas and 2 Frankensteins because Migo originally made a red-headed Dracula and a blue-haired, it came out weird, a blue-haired Frankenstein. And I had a red-headed Dracula once. Unfortunately, I don't have it now, otherwise I'd have a lot of money. The red-headed Dracula and the blue-haired Frankenstein sell for astronomical prices now. The Migo ones, not these, the original 70s Migo ones, sell for a lot of money now. But because Migo made those variations in the 70s, Figures Toy Company made them when they reissued those characters, the Mad Monsters, in the 2000s. So that was the reissue set. Now let me see who made these things. According to this package, it says classictvtoys.com, bringing back childhood memories. And then it has a Rhode Island address and phone number. Made in India. That's interesting. It has a logo, classictvtoys.com, Figures Toy Company underneath. So they're using both those names on the package. That's what the bottom of the card looks like. And that website is still active. I went there today just to make sure it was still around. It's still around. That URL still works. And there's the logo that has both the company names on it. So it's the same company. And you can see already, even though this is early in the company's development, they've got a huge selection of characters, even at this early stage. And they just went nuts from here. I mean, they've acquired so many different licenses. And it's particularly their Batman 66 and their Scooby-Doo lines are especially noteworthy. I've thought about collecting the Scooby-Doo line, but there's so many characters in it. And starting now, I'm already so far behind. It would cost a lot of money and be a lot of trouble to get into that line. There's what we're going to talk about. Remember, I told you we're not talking about the Mad Monsters in this episode. So you've noticed all through this episode we haven't mentioned those Mad Monsters. No, we're here to talk about the second series Mad Monsters. 2005 second series Mad Monsters. Drum roll. Isn't that an impressive sight? Is there a figure in there? He's hiding. It's blackness. That is the Grim Reaper. This series, and the first series had a logo similar to that. But even the logo in the corner, if you look at the original Migo version, this reissue version is so much, it's clunkier. The original logo is elegant. It's a very dynamic logo. This is just weird, the way they put this together. And the first series with the reissue figures had that kind of a logo. And that put me off. I didn't like the look of that. The whole presentation of these put me off. That's why I didn't buy those. The figures didn't look quite right. Logo didn't look quite right. The whole thing just didn't look quite right. But when they came out with a second series, I actually was excited by this second series. And we'll talk about these as we go along. But the second series, when they came out, this was a big deal to me because there hadn't been Mego-style monsters in a long, long time. If you're going to be strict about it, I mean, really, since the Tomland monsters. Now, Toy Island made those electronic monsters in the 90s, and those are Mego-ish. They're Mego-like. But they don't really have Mego-style bodies. They're reminiscent of Megos. But it's hard to think of a real Mego-style classic monster toy between the Tomland monsters in the late 70s and early 80s and these in 2005. So this was a big deal to finally have Mego-style monsters on store shelves. You didn't have to go to some weird source to buy these. You could go to Toys R Us and buy these. Here is the Grim Reaper. Now you can see his face. Ah! That's a cool skull. There's not much to him. He's a pretty simple toy. He's got kind of monster-y hands like the 70s Mad Monsters. Now this particular one, unfortunately, has only one leg. And I don't think he had pants or anything. There's no pants on this guy. He's only got one leg, so he hops around like the blood on Satan's claw. And now he wasn't originally like that when I first got him. His leg broke. It just sort of spontaneously broke. You can see the pin actually broke. So it's not like I can just restring him. The pin is broken off. And here's the leg. You can see there how the pin snapped. And I didn't do anything. He was just on display. You can also get a look at the kind of boots, almost Frankenstein-like boots he's wearing. You get an idea of the way these bodies are designed. They are very much like the 70s Mego figures. I would like to replace this leg, and I did see on the Classic TV Toys Figures Toy Company website, they do have replacement bodies. So I might buy one of those. I'd rather just replace that pin if I could, instead of replacing the whole everything. I'd rather just see if I could replace that pin. Get this pin out of here. It's attached to elastic, I think. See if I can get that out and stretch the elastic through here and get a new pin. I don't know, maybe that's a foolish project, but I'd like to fix him if I could. He's cute. He's a nice little Grim Reaper. This is his accessory. But that is the Grim Reaper's accessory. And like a lot of things in this series, this is based on some pre-existing item. This was a full-size Halloween prop, and it was probably made by Gemmy or Ruby's or one of those kinds of companies, but it had a blow mold handle. Well, this is the handle, a blow mold blade. I remember these in the stores, but it was a full-size thing. And they just took one of those and modeled this off of it, shrunk it down to the action figure size, and you'll see some other examples of that design philosophy in a moment. I think this was the figure that really sold me on the whole set. This is the Gruesome Ghost. Collectors like to call him the Yarn Ghost, for obvious reasons. The Gruesome Ghost. Can't quite see the letters, but it says Gruesome Ghost. The Gruesome Ghost. Nah. I just thought this was so clever. What a way to represent a ghost. They could have just given him a white sheet, you know, for what that's worth, or a blue sheet or whatever, but they wanted to do something different. To represent something that's kind of intangible, not really there, a phantom. But I particularly liked what I thought was a callback to Tomland. This feels very Tomland-esque. Not that Tomland, well, yeah, I guess they did use yarn for things, but it kind of reminds me of the weird loops on some of the Tomland figures, cuffs representing fur. There's just something, it feels like something Tomland would have done, only they wouldn't have gone this all out on it. This is too much yarn. Tomland would have cheaped out, not used that much yarn. There's no accessory with this guy. I think because he's got so much yarn, maybe he's kind of expensive, I suppose, with all that yarn. This is the loose figure. I don't want to obscure him. Maybe I'll hold him by down here. Ooh. He's a ghost. Obviously, that face is inspired by the Scream ghost face mask, which is originally from Fun World. Fun World's Fantastic Faces ghost. Clearly inspired by that. Also, in both the Fun World mask and this, you could say they're inspired by the Scream, the painting, the Scream. He's got rooted hair. I like that they made him blue. That's just an interesting choice. And the only thing giving him some shape is just a single piece of yarn. I guess it's two pieces. But it's looped around. I think it's one piece, but it's looped around twice and it's tied, and that's it. And that's the only thing that really gives him a shape, that waist. There it is, tied in the back. Another 70s style technique, just tie it. Just rope it around, tie it. And you can see that the yarn is stitched into the costume. Probably not an easy figure to make, actually. I mean, it looks like a charmingly chintzy way to approach this, but I bet it was actually difficult to produce this. He's got, he's got white boots and a white outfit in there. Kind of like a Azrak Henway mummy would have white shoes or white boots. This is a unique figure, and this was the thing that really sold me. This was the one that maybe made me decide, okay, I'm going to buy these. Just it was so unique and so weird. Here we have the Salem Witch. Salem Witch. I like the color of her card. All of these have different colored cards. That's a nice touch. Just like the old Migo figures, she has cellophane around her head to keep her hair in check. Note that little piece of elastic on the hat. She's lost one of her shoes. He hasn't lost it. It's just fallen off. It's still in there. And she's this nice minty green everywhere. Not really like a Hulk green or a lizard green. It's kind of a minty green. I don't know if that costume is the same one that the Wizard of Oz witch wears, or if there is a difference. And it's interesting to note that the front color carries over on the back of each of these. So whatever color it is on the front, the back isn't standard. It's not the same back on each one. It's the same selection of other figure lines, but the background is different on each one. The background corresponds to the front. This is the witch, and I do have her hat. Here it is. Can I get her hat to stay on her head without falling off? Hee 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 hee. She, instead of a wicked witch, she looks like she's had some wine. She's inviting you to come over and have some wine with her. Let's chat. Let's have a girls' night out. It'll be fun. And this hat, it did have elastic at some point, but that elastic broke pretty early. It did not last long. I did originally have the elastic going around her head as it's supposed to, around her chin, and that did not last long. That snapped. She has little Planet of the Apes hands. That's an interesting choice. Like Zira, only they're green. I'm assuming that this suit is similar to the Wizard of Oz Wicked Witch, but I don't have one of those to compare it to. So I don't know if it's the identical suit. It's interesting that she doesn't have a cape. I would have given her at least a half cape or something in about right there. Maybe had a little collar on it and parted in the middle. That would have given her a more of a classic witchy kind of look, and it would have completed her with this hat. You know, if she had a little cape sticking out. And she has this accessory. It is a broom, but it doesn't have any bristles. And these accessories are kind of brittle. They're not flexible. That's the broom, so she can knock people upside the head with it. But it doesn't have bristles. And I don't know if this was based on a Halloween novelty, Halloween prop, or if they just made up this broom. I don't recognize this broom as belonging to something else. And finally, we've got the demonic devil. That's kind of redundant, isn't it? The demonic devil. Bum, bum, bum. And they chose green for his background. It kind of reminds me of Darth Maul. that look in his, the expression on his face and the color and everything. This figure, this was the other one that really convinced me to collect this series, this and the Ghost. I really liked this when I saw what the devil looked like. I thought they did a good job. And by good job, I mean more or less they made something that resembled what Migo would have done. Not exactly. Mego wouldn't have done that sculpt exactly. No, they would not have. But generally speaking, it was made the way Mego probably would have done it. Maybe. Probably not. But would Mego have made that leatherette cape on both sides? No, probably not. Mego would have made a costume like that, sort of a Green Arrow style costume, only it's red. And there's the green back, same color as the front. These are actually kind of fragile. I should go into that a little bit. There's a loose devil. I have heard that there was a mask available at the time, or maybe a few years just prior, that resembles this head, that this head was based on a pre-existing mask. I don't know that for sure. That's just something I heard over the years. It wouldn't surprise me. But I've heard that this design isn't completely original, that this was inspired by a pre-existing Halloween mask. So maybe it was. I don't know that for sure because I don't have the mask either in person or a photo of it to compare. But that is something I've heard, and it wouldn't surprise me. And in a minute I'll talk about his accessory, and that's another reason it wouldn't surprise me. Here's his tail. It does have a... It's more like a lion's tail than a devil tail. He doesn't really have a point at the end. So we have something in common because this show often doesn't have a point at the end. This is an interesting cape. It's not what Mego would have done. I don't think they would have made a shiny leatherette cape on both sides like that. But it's interesting. Interesting they went that route. It does have a Mego look, just in an odd way. That back of the head, I mean, that looks like an Iron Man or something. It has a Mego-esque look, even the back of the head. So to me, it does look like a Mego figure. It does have that 70s style, but you know, that sculpt's not 70s. That's a 90s, late 90s, early 2000s style. The sculpt, the character design. It's a cool little toy. I like it. Here is his trident. I don't think you'd call that a pitchfork. That's a trident. And this is also based on a pre-existing full-size Halloween prop. Don't know what company made it. As I said before, probably Gemmy or Ruby's, but it was something like that. One of those companies 20 years ago had a full-size Devil's Trident like this, but a full-size one with a blow mold, forks, and either plastic or wood handle, probably plastic. So a lot of the components in this line were inspired by pre-existing things. The accessories or head sculpt, and probably this head sculpt as well, and perhaps the costume on this maybe is Wicked Witch, Wizard of Oz. I don't know if that skull is completely original, because they do They did make skeletons. They still make a skeleton today that I saw on the website. But I don't know if I don't think it's this skull. It doesn't have that sort of diabolical character to it. It's more of a generic skull. That's part of what makes it sort of authentically Mego-like. That sort of repurposing of pre-existing things. Repurposing of Mego parts or Mego costume pieces. Repurposing of stuff found elsewhere. Now tell me, where do these little slippers come from? Are those like Robin Hood? I think Green Arrow has boots, right? Big green boots. So are these Robin? I don't think so. So are they Robin Hood? I thought he had boots. Maybe not. I don't know. But I feel like I've seen these little medieval-looking slippers before. Little Peter Pan slippers. Little Ren Fair slippers. Well, there we have it. Now, about fragility. These figures are notorious for falling apart. As I said, I didn't play with this or anything. He was just standing there, and the leg fell off. In fact, yeah, he was just standing there and the leg fell off. These figures will come apart in the cards. In fact, before I was taking them out for the show, I was thinking, boy, I'm going to pull them out and their legs are going to be at the bottom of the bubble, or who knows what's going to happen. But they all seem to be intact. The design of the bubble, there's a inner bubble that kind of holds it in place. So even if they did fall apart, they would sort of keep them looking nice because of that insert. But these are notoriously fragile. So if you buy these, just look out. Keep in mind that they break very easily, even when they were new, let alone now, 20 years later. You can imagine how fragile they are. Looking at these prototypes on the card here. It's interesting. So the skull has fangs, that's interesting. But also, the devil clearly has it's the one they used there, has a red cape and a white band holding it on. And I would have thought that he would have a red cape. So that's kind of interesting that they, at one point, he did have one, and they changed their mind and gave him a black cape. Black cape's good too. I would have expected a red cape. And I think it'd be kind of cool to have the devil all red, all blazing red, with red on red. It would have been neat. I'm wondering if in the 70s would Mego have given him like a Human Torch sort of little fire design? Maybe. Possibly. I don't know if Mego would have picked these characters if they'd done a second series in the 70s. And if they did, I don't know if they would have done them this way. There's certainly there is a 2000s aesthetic to these designs. They look compatible with the Mego figures, but they are 21st century toys. You can tell looking at them. But anyway, I mean, I think they did a good job of making them not stick out, not look completely wrong. You could put these next to the Mad Monsters, the originals. Let's do that while we're at it. Pick maybe the two most oddball ones. So there's a 70s mummy, and there's the ghost. Do they look like they go together? maybe not, but I tell you though, it does look like they could have been from the same era, if not for the Scream influence. This does look kind of like a Tom Lane figure. And this is perhaps the most Mego-esque, the witch. Yeah, I mean, I could see this witch being from the 70s. That's possible. I mean, they are of their time, but I think they did a good job of not going way out in left field and reining it in and keeping them, given the resources they had available at the time early in the company's history, at the dawn of this Mego-style resurgence. I think they did a good job of producing something that was adjacent to the vintage Mego style and could be displayed next to the actual Mego figures or to the reissue Mego figures. Well, that's all I have to say about that. I think we can call it quits, yeah, this is it's not a terribly long episode. Not like some episodes that go on forever. We've reached our natural conclusion. I hope you have enjoyed this, and you can take a look and see if you want to add these to your collection. They can be a little pricey. Just shop around. Don't buy the first one you see. But just from what I see on eBay, if you want them on cards, it's going to be hard to get them for less than $100 each, from what I can see, just on eBay. So they're not cheap, but they're not hundreds and hundreds of dollars. No, they're like, $100 or so, $100 and a quarter, in that ballpark. So not cheap, but not terrible. And there's only 4 of them. And once you've got those, you've got them. I think that's it. I hope you're doing well. And of course, all of our thoughts are with the people of Southern California. I do know some people who live in that area and live in the general vicinity of where those fires are. And as of this recording, the fires are still raging. Maybe by the time you see this, hopefully they have come to an end, I hope. But I think all of our thoughts are with them, and I wish the best for everyone facing that catastrophe in California. And I hope everyone pulls through and they get past this horrible ordeal, and that the loss of life is minimized as much as possible. I'm not a thoughts and prayers kind of person, so I can't say that, but my thoughts are with the people of California. That's it. Thank you very much. Until next time, the one who dies with the most toys is dead.